Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome to our charming consortium. We are going to be discussing mental health and cosplay. Here with us today is, well, I'll introduce myself and then I'll let other people introduce themselves. I am Mink the Satyr. I use she, her pronouns, and my claim to fame is I am on a quest to cosplay all 151 Pokemon. For those wondering, I am like maybe 40 something in, so I got a ways to go.
Depends on which ones you count, you know.
Hey, you spoke next. Introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm League of Larcy, aka Larcy. I go by she, her pronouns, and I don't really have a claim to fame because I kind of do a lot of different nerdy things. I don't know, I like anime and I like video games. You can see. Kind of sporting a little bit of both.
All right, I'll go next. Evening. I am GoggleCandy. I go by he, hims. And as far as claim to fames, some people might know me as the Maximum Pegasus that goes on stage for Anime Boston and PortCon and Kineticon and whatever else I decide to host at the current time. But you haven't seen me in a year. That makes me sad. Very sad. Woo, now we'll go over Kitten.
So I guess that leaves me. I'm Kitteninstrings, or you can call me Kit. I use she, her pronouns, and I don't really think I have a claim to fame, but I did have a X-Men Pixie costume that went kind of viral years ago. And I usually cosplay superheroes, but I'm kind of Pokemoning tonight.
I ain't mad. 25th anniversary's coming up. You're right on brand.
Yeah.
That's a pretty rockin' onesie.
Gee, I wonder why. Danny, the maker. I mean,
Nameless.
Larcy, the maker.
So, to give you all a sense of what's happening tonight, we are going to be talking about obviously mental health, but I want to set a framework for you guys that I'm not going to be referring to mental health as a disability. We're going to be talking about mental health as more of a neurodivergent. Many of us have noticed that the Venn diagram of cosplayers slash convention goers and people who identify as having any sort of mental health neurodivergence, it's basically a circle. In our discussions about that, we've sort of come to terms with the fact that in the COVID times, many of us are finding that our mental health issues are really coming in strong. That boogeyman is seeping in through the cracks a little bit more than we would feel comfortable. So, today, what you're going to get from us is we're going to be talking about our own experiences with mental health. And then we are going to talk about what we as individuals are doing as coping mechanisms. So that hopefully, if you are experiencing anything that is similar to what we're experiencing, you can try some of our coping mechanisms as a way of giving yourself solace. These are hard times, and at the end of the day, we just need to be very self loving, self caring, and self forgiving, which can be really difficult in these times. We will have a question and answer portion at the end of our show. So if you have questions, definitely ask them as we're going through. But just know that we won't really be responding to them until the end. So keep that in mind. That all being said, sound good, everybody? Everyone's on level? Beautiful. Excellent. So let's kind of start by just talking about our own experiences with mental health. And I'm going to shift over to Goggle for just a second. Goggle, if you don't mind, can you let the viewers know sort of the lens with which you come into this first? Because you have some special lenses.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not just your glasses.
You and I both have special lenses, as we are both special educators.
Bury that lead. Go on.
Indeed, right? No, I work with very high needs autistic kiddos, and there's a lot of psychological training and classes that go into that. So there's a lot of experience with mental divergence and just different issues that can arise from that just in a normal day essentially. um it was there more you wished me to go into that, or
No, no, that's exactly what you 1000% read my mind. I just wanted you to let everyone know what kind of
Yeah.
expertise they're dealing with here.
Okay.
But if you don't mind now sharing with folks, I know you've had some personal experiences with especially this pandemic and its impact on you and your own approach to how things are going, as it were.
Yeah. So if we like before I touch cosplay, obviously, going into this whole pandemic, I was a new teacher coming into this and then went remote, which, great. I've only been in the classroom for 5 months. This is fine. I'm fine. And then going back into a hybrid model, meaning that I'm still working with children that need hand over hand help that cannot wear masks with 6 staff underneath me, and trying to make sure I balance their mental health on top of mine, in addition to losing my father back in October. So there's just, all sorts of wonderful layers to that. Um, Now, and you think, well, what was my coping skill usually? What's the thing that would ground me? That would be conventions usually. Um, and those don't exist currently unless they are only virtual, which is, it's nice, but it's not a convention. Um,
And you've had a
and
lot of important roles within the convention circuit, right?
So I'm on cosplay for a number of conventions, including PortCon. I run the cosplay chest at Anime Boston, as well as, if they need additional hosting for that, then I help. I've done staff and hosting for Kineticon, for AAC, for any other small con like in the New England area. And like I still have plans for many of these cons just sitting in my Google Drive for the past year, and I want to run these events because I love running those events and putting people on stage, but that's all gone as well. And that was a big creative outlet for me as well. So that's
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling the hurt from
yeah.
not having conventions. Um, Kit, you also did a lot with convention strategies and implementation as well. Do you have anything to add about how the lack of conventions and your role in it has affected you?
Yeah, I did do a lot of conventions. I actually had a lot of physical health issues that made me stop before COVID happened, which led to a lot of mental health issues. But with COVID happening, a lot of my stress outlets have been either escape into work, which was making costumes by or other things via commission, which conventions aren't happening, so nobody really needs commissions.
What, aren't
Uh,
you suggesting that money is tight for people right now too?
a little bit, maybe. Imagine that.
Fuck.
Um, or just going out and working at conventions because I've done not only cosplay but like working with other higher end uh, conventions as staff um, is non-existent, and putting on hold all of the teaching classes that I've had. I usually have classes at my shop to um, teach people how to make their own cosplay and how to create basically sewing and armor and all that fun stuff. And there is no safe way to do that currently.
Right. I mean, it certainly presents lots of challenges. Goggle, was there anything else that you wanted to add about your take from the conventions not running and how that's impacted you?
I mean, the biggest, the other big part of that is, social interaction or lack thereof. There are people who I only see at conventions, and keeping in touch with them during the crisis is becoming a little more difficult over time, just because everyone's kind of reaching their their limits and their coping, and that kind of keeps everyone a little more to their own social circles, with the immediate circles. So it feels a little distancing from like a lot of those friends, and that's also another heavy thing kind of put on the stack.
Yeah. It sounds like and don't let me put words in my mouth, in your mouth, but would you say that you're kind of more of an extroverted person?
I'd go more like like an extroverted introvert. Like I'm very comfortable, like, many times sitting at home and just kind of doing my own thing. But as, like, weeks drag on, like, I do need that extrovert, like I need that outlet, like that needs to occur. Um, and there are very few times where I've actually hit that point where it's like I felt the need to be social to an extent where it's starting to weigh on me. So, new experiences. We'll go with that.
For sure, for sure. I think there's been a lot of memes on social media about the effect of the pandemic on extroverts being particularly grueling, whereas introverts are positively glowing with recharge. But I think for the most part, I think even the introverts are feeling it too. Um, I self-identify as an omnivert, so I I find that when I enter these sort of like downward spirals of my own, I tend to fall more in that introverted spectrum, which is not healthy or good for me because I definitely need social interaction. I am a human. Um, but I should probably back up for a moment and give my history before I go into my own experiences. So, for starters, as Goggle had already mentioned, I am an elementary special education teacher. I do academic work mostly, working with kids with specific learning disabilities, autism spectrum, and I get a couple of students with emotional behavioral that seems to be an uptick in cases of student work that I have, which is kind of cool that we're identifying when kids need support that young. Um, I am also a sufferer of anxiety. That's something that I learned of myself after I started cosplaying. I didn't know that I had like a capital A, capital D anxiety disorder until after years after I had started doing cosplay. They're not related, it's just a fun observation. So, I swear they're not related. Um, but what I've found for my own self is that like when I'm having particularly anxious moments, and they are far more frequent than they used to be. But when I have anxious moments, when I am sewing, um, or crafting or whatever, I get really negative. And this is kind of weird to talk about because I know that I've disclosed some of this with my friends, who are much like very, my intimate friends. But this is the first time I'm really coming out publicly about having an anxiety disorder and the fact that I'm really self-loathing about it. So please enjoy my overshares. It's um it's weird to tell you, but like I have a really hard time with like it needs to be perfect or not at all. And so when things are going south, when it's not tracking the way I want it to, I get very angry. And it's not like I'm angry at externally. It's not like, oh, if it wasn't for my machine, or like, oh, if it wasn't for that noise in the other room that's giving me a headache. No, it's like entirely internal. Like it's, how dare you? You're so expletive stupid. Like I have said, I only say really terrible like insults in two circumstances. Playing Mario Kart and when I'm in an anxious spiral. Yeah, Larcy, you dig me on that Mario Kart. The expletives that come out of this face with Mario Kart.
And Mario Party. It's a friendship breaker.
Girl, I don't even play Mario Party. That's how worried I am for my friendship.
Oh,
Or you
I
just
have
ran
it
out of
next
friends
time.
after a while.
I mean, y'all still here, so presumably it's because we haven't had that shared experience of Mario Party. And
I
we gonna
don't
keep it
lose.
that way.
Definitely not here.
Yeah, I like you too much to play Mario Party. Let's put it that way.
Uh-uh.
But bring it back, bring it back. I'm sorry. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I use humor as a coping mechanism when I'm feeling uncomfortable about my own self and
No
sharing
way.
vulnerabilities. Ah. Shock, surprise, awe. Fun fact, if this isn't spoilers, that's like what most comedians, their comedy comes from a place of pain. Wow, that sounds really deep. But for real, I get really like I'll even get like physically altercative with my crafting. Like I'm not a physically altercative person. I don't even know if that's a word. But with like my crafting, like I've torn stuff up when it hasn't gone my way. I have like and this sounds like I'm being a petulant child, and to some degree I am, but as I've described it to like colleagues when I'm talking about students and not myself, is during this pandemic, I'm up here. Normally, I'm down here. And if something doesn't go my way, whatever, my anxiety level rises, but I can bring it back down, or I'm not too crazy because, again, I'm only here. But what I haven't really realized, or maybe even appreciated, is that I'm like constantly up here, faking it like I'm fine. So when something doesn't go right or go the way that I envisioned, and it's not working as optimally as I would hope, which sounds like a low threshold, and it is, but that's enough to take me over the edge. And my poor partner has had to deal with a lot of very angry outbursts at like 6 in the morning because that's when I craft. When do you craft? Normal hours? Psh, good for you. Um, yeah, I know Larcy doesn't. You're just a weird craft hour time person.
Yeah, it depends upon what time I get off World of Warcraft.
Spurt Leaf played. But I'm sure there are many of you guys who are watching this who feel some degree of that. But like I think the hardest part of all of this it has been recognizing that I'm doing it because it's at this point that armor is so that pattern of behavior is so deeply ingrained in me from like pre-pandemic that I don't always immediately recognize that I'm being so negative on myself because it'll just start with me being like, "Come on, you got this. Like, come on. Just one more seam, just one more seam." And then it just spirals. And I'm starting to become more and more aware how frequent that is, which is both alarming and I guess relieving because I'm starting to notice it at least. So, small gains.
Recognition is the first step.
That's right. That's right. Oh man. Okay, that feels I got that funky feeling you get when you're like, "Oh, I just like revealed my gross inner self as opposed to like the sparkly shiny wonderful self." And hope you guys enjoyed that.
I mean, it's human to feel those things,
Oh,
you
bless.
know? Like
Thank you,
everybody
therapist
has an inner
Larcy.
monologue. Everybody has that inner saboteur, and you know where I'm getting that from.
I do.
Um, so I mean, shouldn't feel too gross, you know?
Thanks for letting me know I'm not alone. That was weirdly touching. I'm not gonna cry during our panel, guys.
I always say the weird things.
That's not weird. That's touching and sweet. In what universe is that weird? Thank
I
you
don't
for being a
know.
support network.
I say cliche things, especially things that I see on TV.
Listen, I don't mind if you're gonna cite RuPaul as long as your citation is delightful. Thank you.
I
All right.
brushed up.
All right. I got Kit. Moving past. Kit.
Ah!
I've shared my emotional vulnerability. Jacuz.
No, me. Okay. So it might come as a surprise to some people. I'm a mom of, let's see, how many kids do I have? I have to count. I have 5 kids.
Wait, you have
Although
5?
I have 5. I have the 2 twins. They're 4. They're 5 next week. I have 2 13-year-olds, which 2 13-year-old boys. One will be 14 in 2 months, and then I have a 10-year-old boy. So let me tell you, it's been interesting.
I don't think I knew about the 13-year-old. I thought you just had a different prime number of children.
No, no, it's been fun. But all of which have different uh fun quirks about them. We've got some autism in the mix, we've got anxiety in the mix, we've got a lot of ADHD in the mix.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and which bounces really well with uh, my my own ADHD and my other partner's ADHD and uh, autism and my own anxiety, depression, and what else do I have? ADHD, depression.
You're our neurodivergent expert over here.
No, I'm just a prime example.
We love
But
you.
yeah, um, so yeah, I'm a mom of happy fun time children who like to bounce very interestingly off of each other.
I like the word excitable.
They can be.
I like how bounce off of each other is a fun way of saying they sibling at each other. I feel like anyone who has siblings is like, yeah, that's
Ugh,
glossing it.
I don't know if you saw my Facebook update from this morning about the two 13-year-olds who were playing. Oh my. I can't even remember. Oh, they were playing Smash Brothers and killing each other, and sometimes you have to wonder what exactly they're doing.
Killing
So,
each other.
yeah,
That.
killing each other.
At least
About
you're
that.
not doing it in real life, so
Ah,
True. It is very true.
aren't they though?
I
Those are
mean,
stories for another time.
Fair, fair.
listen, we've all done things to our siblings that we're not proud of.
Unless you're
Mm,
an only child.
yeah.
Are any of us only childs here?
No.
Crickets.
No. We all have things that we're not proud of.
I'm a middle child, can't you tell? I'm desperately seeking attention constantly.
I'm the oldest
Oh,
by 6 years, so you can only
oh,
imagine.
I am the oldest by 4 and 30 years.
All right. How
I
Yeah.
did
about
say
you,
that.
Goggle? Where do you fall?
Oh, I'm the oldest by 2 years.
Oh.
Hey, at least you guys probably were on the same wavelength with only 2 years apart.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, no.
Roughly.
I initially got into special ed because my brother is autistic, so
Yes.
there was a bit of a disconnect at the near early childhood. So,
I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Thank you for sharing that.
e.
Cool.
So yeah, so wrangling all of my fun stuff around all of the rest of my family's fun stuff has been kind of hard, especially with COVID happening. Um, Especially when my anxiety and my depression start bumping heads with each other. And of course, my ADHD runs rampant when I want to be. I actually moved all of my stuff all of my sewing and cosplay stuff out of my house into this wonderful shop that nobody can see behind me because it's a disaster. Because I haven't been here to clean it. Um, but I have been told it is very creatively messy.
Well, you know
but
what they say. If a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, I'd hate to know what an empty desk is a sign of. This is, by the way, brought to you by Hoarders Anonymous.
yes,
You know, I
but
actually consider your shop to be more like a treasure trove, and
Good
you just have
job.
to look for the treasure. And sometimes there's satisfaction in the digging, okay?
I am glad that somebody feels
Or
that.
climbing, in my case, since I
I
like to
need you
climb
to
up
know
into the rafters.
this woman has seen my house too, so she's
Also a treasure trove.
thanks.
Yeah, but but going back to, I have the fun times of feeling like I should be doing one thing and then getting really down on myself about wanting to do that because I want to cosplay, I want to craft. I actually haven't made a new cosplay for myself in almost 5 years because I feel like if I am going to be crafting for myself, I should actually be crafting for other people. Because, well, before COVID, it was my job. But now during COVID, and I don't have so many um, commissions and stuff, I feel like I should be at my house. And why should I be at my shop doing stuff for myself when I should be at home cleaning or taking care of the kids or doing laundry or dishes or one of the many things that is doing at the house? But then when I'm also at my house, my anxiety is like, oh, but you could be at the shop doing all of these things. Why aren't you doing all these things at the shop? You were so much of a better person when you were being creative, and your creativity gives you more energy. To which then my brain just decides it's going to shut down and I can't handle any of this. And then 5 hours later, I find myself still on the couch.
Mood.
Nothing.
Mood.
Yeah.
It's strange. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more about like how depression and ADHD can play with each other? Because I think that something I've experienced is that like kind of general population views depression as this kind of like I'm sad and I don't want to do anything, whereas ADHD is kind of generally viewed as like I'm feeling like I'm being run by a motor. And those two seem to be like they'd be in opposition and like surely you'd balance out, right? Can you explain to folks why that's not the case?
Yeah, so at least with me, it's definitely not the case. It just makes me feel kind of like with what you feel, Mink, where you end up beating yourself up about everything and how you feel. My ADHD tells me you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, and your depression says, but you're not doing it. So we're going to take all of the want to do and put it over here, and then maybe I might feel like doing something else, like, oh, what's a good fun example of this morning? I went to the bathroom to find my tea, but it wasn't where I wanted to go, and I had to verbally remind myself that it wasn't in there and had to go into the living room to find my tea. But then I was disappointed because it had gotten cold. So then I just set the tea down and went and scrolled on Facebook for I think an hour and a half, even though I should have gone into the kitchen and just reheated my tea.
Doom scrolling instead of doing literally anything to advance your day is,
Yep.
I think, the name of the game right now. I have Don't even get me started on the fact that when you start doom scrolling, especially in the cosplay community, you're on Instagram, you're scrolling, you see that one person who like is killing it in everything,
Yes.
and
Oh
then
my.
you're just like, I love that you're killing it, but I secretly hate you for being productive while I suck. Ah, but
Yep.
I am gonna plus like and comment. I have like 3 people that every time they do something on my Instagram, I'm like, oh, I love that you're so talented, and I hate myself for not being more productive. Yeah, no.
Yep.
Mm,
I feel those feels
mm,
all
mm,
the time.
mm.
You are not alone.
Hey, you're not alone. That's, you know what? Didn't think that this was going to be yeah, Larcy's got it. Didn't think this was going to be a subtle message throughout our presentation today, but hashtag you're not alone.
Yeah.
Warm fuzzies. Warm fuzzies, y'all. Hey, Larcy, can you add to our warm fuzzies? Because I know I'm burying the lead a little bit, but I know that your experience with mental health and cosplay might lighten the mood a little bit. Can you save us?
Well, I guess I can give a little background on me.
Please do.
I'm the Link, between all of us. Is anybody
Get
laughing
out.
at my pun?
Out.
I actually made a pun and nobody's laughing.
I know, it's because I'm sad I didn't think of it.
So I am anxiety and I am OCD. It's great. I had anxiety well before I did cosplay. I've had anxiety since I pretty much came from the womb. Um, I've had insomnia issues since I was 5, as they dated it, anyways. Um, as for the OCD thing, it's a little bit more recent. I hail from the medical field aspect of all of COVID. I've been working as a medical technologist for 8 years, and prior to that, I worked with taking care of people in their homes, from people with dementia to people with any kind of disability, on like in the whole spectrum of either it's physical or it's something that is genetically wrong. Anyways, I'm getting a little too into it, but so I
Not at
come
all, I
from the
love it.
medical side, and I've always been a little bit more. I have to make a routine, so to speak. Everything has to be the way I put it, or I have to stop and I have to like do it again. Um, I kind of line the way I work is I set things up to fall like dominoes later, because the satisfaction of like walking to the top of a hill and going, yes, is my icing on top of the cake at the end of the day. But to get there, I have to be meticulous in everything that I do. So, uh, it's hard to explain the things that I do, because I know I'm not like a typical person who does OCD things, because I think it's something that I kind of developed over the years. Because the more you know, the more you're kind of like, oh, don't do this. Oh, I really shouldn't do that either. So I feel like I've lost a lot of like the naive me that wasn't bothered by anything 10 years ago, and now everything bothers me. And with COVID especially, I now like I have to like sanitize my hands every time I leave a room. Yesterday I I washed my bathroom for 3 hours. I Lysol the walls. But like, can I just say that like my house is clean? I have not been sick since this all started, essentially. I'm vaccinated. My husband's like not sick. I have lived under a rock. So I don't know why I'm panicking so much, because I don't go out. And when I do, I hike in the middle of the woods where there's no one. So I feel a little bit crazy, but like for me, with all of that being said, cosplay and crafting and creating has been the thing that really like brings me back to earth, so to speak. Um, I have done more personal projects in the past year than I have probably in my entire cosplay career. And I guess if I had to put a date on it, it's been at least 10 years. I've done like 1 or 2 outfits a year, and half of the time I would buy them. And there's no shame in that. But I really got into my sewing game like 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, like, even though crafting's a little bit slower in that respect, it's been way more satisfying at the end of the day. But this past year, because of all the negativity floating around in the air, because of all the things that I can't control, the one thing I can control is my creative output. So, dedicating myself to something that makes me happy and satisfied at the end of the day, where I can turn around and be like, oh, look, I made this. Oh my God, I look just like the character. How did I do that? Like, it is so cool. And then on top of that, I took on a personal project where I designed my own looks, like not anybody else's idea, my own. And I have done 3 out of the 4 that I've planned. And if any of you have been following me, you'll know that I'm talking about my seasonal project. I'm an avid reader and I love fantasy, and I have designed so far 3 fantasy looks for spring, summer, and fall. I'm working on winter. It's a little bit slower because I have a lot longer. I have 6 months of winter versus the 2 months of fall and the 3
Don't worry,
months
the
of summer.
groundhog said you get 6 more weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you
Great.
get it's 6 more weeks of winter. I mean,
Well, from
five now.
where I'm from, I'm like the deep north, so you can probably add like 3 or 4 more weeks on top of those 6 weeks.
Seems legit.
Yeah. So, like, bringing it all back, that's kind of how I've been coping. It's this creative everything is like my relaxation essentially. It's how I like bring it all back from the craziness that I'm seeing when I go to work and drive in and come home and go to the grocery store. All of that. Like I take it and I put it into something positive. Because if I didn't do that, I would probably be stuck on the couch, doom scrolling, the things that everybody gets stuck doing that, I mean, it's fine. Everybody, it's not easy. Like, you can say the things and you can, like, line it up and outline it and tell yourself this is what you have to do. But it is hard to do the thing that you actually have to do. It's scary. Everybody's got a routine and a habit, and those are hard to break because you've done them so long. It's a lot of willpower and everybody's exhausted, and how can you push yourself to do these really exhausting things when you're already tired? So it's a lot of just a step at a time, essentially. Take a small task, be like, oh well, I'll go brush my teeth to get my day started. Now I'm going to brush my hair, because it's the baby steps, as stupid as it sounds. It's the baby steps that helps you get through like all this garbage. You just have to sift through it, and it's time consuming and it's frustrating, and you end up taking steps back. But
From an elementary special ed perspective, that routine building, that pulling yourself is very much what instilled in when you're having those sorts of like downward spirals. That's a great technique that we employ, is just even these small little routines, as simple as you say, brushing your teeth. As long as you're doing those stupid little habits every little day, then you'll at least have accomplished a thing. And yeah, you might be sitting there being like, yeah, all I did was brush my teeth. But it's like, yeah, but you did that. And,
right.
or whatever its functional equivalent is. I do want to say that I really loved the message that you gave us earlier, which was that in this time where so many things are out of your control, that cosplay is like the thing that you can control. Because I think that's a really um, interesting and motivating way to get your butt off the couch if you're having a hard time motivating. Is like, I'm upset because I can't control, so now I can. So
And
what I actually want to do is I want to shift all of our frames of thinking now to talk about our coping mechanism, because as therapeutic and wonderful as it is to vent, I don't want to leave our viewers without a plan for how can they address some of the things that we've brought up. And I'm not saying that any of us are in command of our own BS enough that we can say that we're perfectly adjusted social human beings. That's a tall order. But I can say that we have fought the fight, and we know some of the stances. I'm elaborating on this metaphor. We know some of the stances, so we can tell you what forms you should take if you're in the same battle. This metaphor very
Arena.
quickly escaped me. I'm sorry. I tried.
Arena.
I don't even know what that
is that
is,
a form?
Larcy. That form. It's actually
Yeah.
the entire rest of our presentation is Larcy teaching you how to make a superhero mask with your hands. Go ahead, Larcy. So step 1, get to 2 fingers. Step 2, beautiful, excellent. Okay, but for realsies. Okay, but for realsies. I guarantee that's going to come up in one of the questions. Like, can you actually?
Please ask me about my superhero mask.
God help us. All right. Let's I swear I'm good at being laser focused. Let's do this. All right, so I want to start over with Goggle. At the beginning of our presentation, you were talking about like how COVID fatigue has affected you with conventions. Do you have any coping mechanisms that you can share with our viewers to get them feeling a little bit better?
I mean, like there's the optimistic view about like when conventions will come back, but in reality, the big thing that I think a lot of people are missing, aside from like the cosplay and the panels and such like that, is really the social aspect and just seeing those people again. And the biggest approach I've been trying to take in that regard is similar to like con depression. The best way to cure con depression is planning for the next con. Right now, where like it's a lot of that social need, the best way to approach that is to plan the next like social, like I want to say event. I don't want to say gathering, but like next social,
Event sounds
thing.
good.
Yeah,
That's nice
event
and
sounds
safe.
fine, right? Yeah. And that can take a lot of different forms. It could like there are people who are in your immediate circle. Okay, that's fine. There are people maybe who live nearby, and you can plan to go to a park and within remaining safe with one another, still be able to meet and stay social. There are those people who live a great distance from you, and that's approaching that has taken a couple different approaches. I've had Zoom calls where at least like 10 of us are all playing Jackbox or Cards Against Humanity, or we're kind of like just kind of reminiscing or just creating not just like a Zoom call and everyone sits there and just talks, but creating an event out of it and having something to look forward to in that regard. So like, oh, Friday, all of us who were in this chest from this convention or whatever, we're going to meet up and we're going to watch this movie or this anime together and just give ourselves an event or something, a thing to look forward to. Not just we're going to talk, we're going to hang out again, but like make it centered around an event, and therefore it becomes something a little more scheduled in your mind, something more that you can plan around and you can prepare yourself for. um
Now for the vaguely scripted element of this presentation. But Goggle, what if I don't know anyone in the cosplay community or convention circuit, but I still want to do all these amazing things? How will I ever get to participate?
if we're talking about in conventions, cosplays, and other such things, when those return, those will always be here. However, if we're talking like, oh, I've never been to one, but I still want to get like involved with those people, with that, these different communities, everyone who comes into cosplay is into cosplay because they have some sort of fandoms. They have things that they're very interested in. For Anime Boston, when I really first got like involved in a community, the whole reason I even made a Tumblr, I don't have it anymore, but I made one initially, was because I went to a photo shoot for Phoenix Wright for Ace Attorney. That's a fandom I'm really passionate about. Well, I don't need that photo shoot in order to find and start interacting with that group. If I'm making like 5 cosplays out of League of Legends, which if you are, I'm sorry, but if you are, um,
Shade.
I know. Uh, then there are cosplay like League of Legends like groups, local groups even. Some
How
that
do you
come
find them?
directly out of Anime Boston, and finding them is surprisingly easy. Majority of them have at the very minimum either a Facebook group or a Tumblr. I would I prefer the Facebook groups. Um, that is me. Tumblr is something I touch once in a while. Um, but
Oh,
that
Tumblr.
way, like if you join that sort of group, you're coming in with two things you're already like invested in together as a group, cosplay and that fandom in particular, and therefore you can actually kind of create I want to say bond or just even start like sparking those little friendships. And then when conventions are a thing that can be physically participated in again, oh, we're all going to this convention, let's meet up and do the photo shoot, and we can and it makes it just a lot easier to really kind of start that dialogue and meet those convention people that you would normally meet more naturally walking around the con and stopping them to comment on their cosplay.
Has anyone here been to a virtual convention?
Yep.
Yeah.
I actually ran a forum for Angelic Con back in, oh gosh, It was like a month or so ago.
I think it was December. That
Was
sounds
it
right.
December?
I
I
think
think it
so.
was somewhere around then, a little bit before Christmas. I was slated to do an online masquerade, but unfortunately, my work does not give me every weekend off, so I ran a forum instead. And I actually had a lot of activity. I ran a cosplay Q&A, and it was actually really fun. People would ask questions, and if I didn't know the answer, I'd find them a resource, or I would share the things that I've done successfully, with a good outcome. I wouldn't tell somebody a garbage method, and I would share that. And we had some pretty good conversation going on for 2 days straight. So all through a Discord, and I've noticed that there's been a lot of Discords popping up for everything that you need, nerd.
Um, so thank you, by the way. uh, so moving on, I want to make sure that we've got time to get to everybody's coping mechanisms. So I apologize, Goggle, if I'm kind of like cutting us a little bit. I want to share my take on. I know I'm like moving on now to me. I'm gonna share my sort of take on what to do about the negative self-talk aspect when you're feeling anxious. Uh, as I've sort of alluded to before, when you have anxiety, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to head it off at the pass and have a plan. So, my plan for you all today is to just quickly tell you about something philosophy referred to as the zones of regulation. This is something that I work with my students all the time, but you can work with this with anyone of any age. In fact, we even do this at our faculty meetings with my colleagues. And that's where you self assess where you are with regard to your energy level. Are you feeling high energy or low energy? Are you feeling positive or negative? And there really is this like quadrant that you can fly into with that. For example, my target would be, sort of like mid energy positive, which would put me in kind of this green zone of if you're doing it by color, which would mean that I'm feeling calm, I'm feeling alert. When I start getting more negative and I'm high energy, I might be starting to get into like the yellow zone of regulation where I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling surprised by something. This is where I tend to be when I'm starting cosplay or just where I am in general, which might not be great because when things start going wrong, then I fall into that red zone of regulation, which is like red, like a traffic light. Red means stop. You're not getting anything done because I am just so angry and volatile. So when I'm looking at my own self, my ideation is first of all recognizing, okay, this is where I am in this moment. Like, stop. Where am I in this moment? Can I name what emotion I'm feeling? And if I can't, there's actually, it sound weird, but if you Google search zones of regulation, there are so many images that you can find. Pick the one that works best for you. Um, that will have these wonderful little like keywords that, this is going to sound lame, print it, have it, so that when you're starting to get in a mood, whatever that mood is, you have something there so you can identify your mood. And once you've identified your mood, you can identify, okay, if I am still in the green zone and feeling good, then okay, I can maybe continue to craft. If I am veering into the yellow zone, I have identified I'm nervous, I am feeling anxious, I'm feeling scared about something. That's my cue. Okay, I might need to take a break. And I might not want to take a break, but I have to force myself. That's my action plan. Take a break, walk away, do something. Go outside for 5 minutes. Use the bathroom, get a drink, eat some food. Your blood sugar is probably low. You're probably dehydrated, one of a thousand things. If I'm finding that I've self-identified and I'm in the red, I've got to stop. We're done today. Maybe I'm done for the day, maybe I'm done for that part of the day, but we're done. And no good is going to come if I continue down this road. And that's really hard to recognize in yourself. But I encourage you to make that sort of action plan for yourself. And again, it sounds so meta and it sounds so dumb when you just say it like, oh, yeah, identify your emotion and this is your steps. Believe me, I wouldn't say this if it didn't work because I do have to get better about walking away. But something I've learned about myself during this pandemic is that when I've identified that it's time to take a break, it's been better for me and that it's worth its weight in gold. So I just beseech you to try. All right, let me shift over to Kit, because you're going to be
Mhm.
talking about how to get out of that funk, aren't you?
I think so. Or at least I hope so. So, to go back to our hashtag, you are not alone. I I rely on my friends heavily. Um, Case in point, I did not have anything prepared for me to wear for this at all, and I was so not able to get in the right frame of mind to even make myself something that would fit, let alone be wearable because of everything that was going on. I have been borrowing spoons from next week, as it were. Um, that this morning I just messaged one of my friends and was like, "Hey, do you have some sort of romper or something I could borrow?" And thankfully she was like, "Yes, absolutely, stop by." And I was able to pick it up, and here we are. So, on top of that, just being able to forgive yourself for not having the spoons or mental capacity to get things done. It is okay that you are feeling this way right now. It is okay, and your feelings are valid if you cannot do this right now. Um, and being able to forgive yourself for that is hugely important. Um, and on top of that, if your depression or anxiety or any of these things are starting to get the better of you, it is absolutely okay to ask for help, whether it be asking a friend to help you with something or just so that you can vent, or even therapy. Therapy is an absolute reasonable option. I highly recommend therapy to anybody who feels like they need it.
I go to therapy at least. It used to be once a week, but now it's once every 2 weeks. But like virtual therapy has been a godsend.
Yeah. I do therapy sometimes twice a week, depending on how much I need it. Also, meds. There is no shame in relying on meds. Your brain is chemicals. If your chemicals are not balanced and medication can help you get there, that is an option, and that is wholly viable and very encouraged.
Talk to
If
your
it is,
primary care.
yes.
Bing.
Hey, it's important to know that you have the ability to get it, but it does
Exactly.
require a step.
You want to
It
see
does.
my medicine?
You have it right there.
Ah,
Wait, what?
It's a
Is
whoopie
that
pie.
sugar.
Oh, I was like, do you actually have your meds? Because mine are in the bathroom.
mine
No,
are at
the
my
meds that I take are not available right now.
I figured.
I don't know what your meds were because you're this tiny.
It's a whoopie pie. It's been sitting
Oh,
in front of me
nice.
the whole time. I'm trying not to drool in front of everybody.
Well, you know what? That was your incentivizer. I
Yes.
am a firm believer in incentivizers to do something. Oh, you did this thing? Congratulations. You may have a pie. Speaking of incentivizers, actually having nothing to do with incentivizers. If you, those of you who are watching, I do want to invite you to ask questions of us as we start to open up the Q&A. So if you haven't already and you do have questions for us about cosplay, about mental health, about anywhere the two shall meet, please fire away. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube or Twitch, we have the ability to see it. Goggle is standing by
Yeah.
to.
If you stated something much earlier in the evening, that might have gone past the point where Facebook's like, okay, we don't need those messages anymore, so you might need to restate those. Um, the one message I did see from Nerd Caliber,
Mon Dieu.
asked the chat in general, but I'll start with that while the delay in the feed
Of
is
course,
comes
lag
around.
is real.
Yes. Was asking if there was a concern about people who've made cosplays, and then when conventions actually do come around, if if that meme, that theme is now like kind of past its prime. as cosplays go. So is there a concern about people making cosplays, and then maybe conventions don't come back soon enough, and that cosplay might lose uh, relevancy? Like no one's
I
gonna
don't know, Gation
cosplay.
Impact.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's a better example than I had.
Can I just say that you can make cosplay during COVID times and broadcast it without a convention,
True.
and everybody will be psyched to see it. And you
Ah.
don't need a photo shoot. All you need is your cell phone. Like, show us that cosplay that you made. It doesn't have to become irrelevant over time. Show us now. When you put all this effort into it, there's never a better time than now. And
Although I would argue that conventions are that wonderful melting pot of like
it's true.
everything is both relevant and outdated. Like, and
Yeah.
don't even get me started on the whole like reboots because like what 2 years ago, if you showed up to a convention as Sesshomaru from Inuyasha, like people would be like, "Oh, you're that guy."
Yep.
That that show got a reboot. Sesshomaru's wicked relevant presently.
It's
Mm,
never not relevant. Can I
That's
just
right.
say?
Well, I mean that's just words to live by. Your cosplay is never not relevant.
And if you're worried
That's
about
better.
places to show off your cosplay, all of the Facebook groups that exist that Goggle was talking about.
And weirdly also the subreddits.
Yes.
um,
Oh, Jeebus Reddit.
I have one question came
What do
in.
you got?
Hello. Any advice on reducing stress while at a physical convention? And I would ask the person who asked this to elaborate. Do you mean in general, or when we start going back to those conventions and there's that kind of gray period where we're coming out of COVID and going into more normalcy?
Kid, I feel like you're very well equipped for conventions in general to answer this question.
Indeed. And really, if we're talking like my approach to that would be that the question concerns coming from COVID times back to kind of like normalcy, because there's going to be a gray area, much like there was going into this, where people
Mhm.
kind of get used to like maybe eventually not wearing a mask all the time, or being able to be within a foot of someone. Um, which at that point it's really only go as far as you're comfortable like being at first, because there's gonna be an adjustment period, especially going back to a large event again. If you feel more comfortable going to a convention and still wearing a mask, then do that. If you want to go to convention and maybe just like stay like AB is big enough that you can find enough space away from most people, just if you need to like be away from them, really don't push yourself. But I would also insist, like, if you want to go back to conventions, start dipping your toe in the water again, and just realize eventually it will be okay to be within a few feet.
Kit, do you want to talk about like what to do if you're feeling overwhelmed in general at a convention? So like even the pre-COVID times, like what to do?
Sure. So, my favorite, I have, there's a lot of empty corners at conventions. Uh, my favorite go to is earbuds or headphones. Anything you can do to cancel out the noise is huge. Um, if you are at a prime example would be PAX, whether it be PAX East or PAX West or any of the multitude of PAXs there are right now. They have this place called Take a Break Room where you can actually go into an isolation pod tent, basically thing, and stick yourself in there and self isolate for a few minutes just to recharge and help yourself calm down and come out of whatever type of anxiety you're having. Um, I'm not sure about how many other conventions have adopted this, but I know PortCon has a lounge that you can also go into and chill. It doesn't have the quite so much the isolation pods as other places do, but Usually finding a small place where you can just either like face a corner and just pull up your hood and make sure that nothing gets in or out can really help with that.
And the
Um,
good news is a lot of these smaller conventions are run by like people rather than corporations. And these
yep.
people are similar to all of us in the sense that they too have been experiencing mental health issues across this pandemic and even before that. So I do notice that a lot more of the smaller conventions are really starting to jump on board with these AFK rooms or,
Yeah.
quiet rooms or when folks are feeling overwhelmed or just need a place to be calm with dimmer light. Um, the bigger conventions, it's a little bit harder for them to have as many spaces because larger conventions, these are like the Comic Con,
Mm,
that it's harder for them to tab off that space in the sense that there's just so many humans. And if you're only going to have like one area in an entire convention center, that might be a challenge. That
mm,
being said, it's not unheard of. And Kit's um, advice for if you don't know of a designated space for that sort of mental health break, there are places like that you can make that space for, even if that place is going to a bathroom stall and just closing the
yeah.
door. Because bathroom stalls aren't especially chaotic.
Also, staff. Staff are a great resource.
Good point.
If you can find a staffer for that convention, normally or generally they have a good idea of the layout of the convention space and they can be like, I know exactly what you mean. And they can either escort you to that place if they're allowed to leave their post, or they can give you directions on where to go to get away from everything. Another good thing that I've noticed that some people do, if you don't want to, say, go to the convention the entire time and you only want to get a day pass, most conventions that have multiple days will have um, the not Saturday and not Friday are going to be slower times to go. So
Some conventions that's only a Sunday, other conventions that might include a
Thursday
Thursday, or some of them are even Wednesday. And oh my
or
God, who's got the
Monday,
I
time?
don't know what con that would be.
Who's got the
like
time?
PAX is what is
Thursday. It's officially Thursday to
Thursday.
Sunday.
Thursday
Yeah.
to Sunday. I think PAX West was also Thursday through
And
Sunday, but
don't even get me started on Dragon Con, which is Thursday to Monday.
yeah, Arisia is also a longer con that goes until Monday because it has that
Those
holiday.
holiday weekends, man.
Yeah, but 4 day cons, I would say like Sunday is your go-to quietest day. I don't know why. It just seems to be that most people would prefer to go on Saturday, so they would go on Sunday to avoid the big crowds, especially if you want to get around an expo floor or a vendor's area and avoid all of the crowds that might make you like cause for anxiety or ADHD meltdown with small children that you might have in tow.
All right,
Other
so we're gonna move
cons
on to the next question, Kit. So let's get Goggle to cue us
Yeah.
up.
And I might jump around in like the sequence that people sent questions in because I do want to prioritize those that focus on like the mental well-being and uh
So
such
if we
like
do
that.
have time, those of you who are asking questions that are less on topic, we're not going to say off topic, but less on topic, we will hopefully get to you. If we
Yep.
don't, please feel free to send us those questions directly at the end of our presentation. We will drop our social medias for you.
Um one that kind of that jumped out to me as one, which I think is really good to address. Question was, how about ways to generate positive attention to keep your spirits up while we wait for conventions to resume?
Lord, if Larcy doesn't answer this, I'm going to eat something.
Wait,
Yeah,
why me?
Because you're a positive human.
Oh, well, I live under a rock. I'm like the friendly introvert. I like poke my head out. I'm like, hey guys, and then I go back under.
Oh, you're a groundhog.
nah.
I like to think of myself as Patrick Star.
Oh, you're a star.
I don't know what that is.
The SpongeBob reference.
Oh, okay.
I got you.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah. Ways to generate positive attention to keep your spirits up while we wait for conventions to resume.
Okay, show it off. If you made something, show everybody.
How
Even
would
if
you
it's
best
just
recommend that?
okay. Officially, you can use social media, of course. You know, the usual routes: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Twitter is actually a really good medium for artists. It's really easy to retweet art and music and pictures, even more so than people's like long-winded tweets. I've found I actually follow more artists on Twitter than I do Instagram or even Facebook, and they're much easier to access. And this is something that I discovered in the last year. I myself am really bad at posting on Twitter, but when I do get on it, I doom scroll Twitter the most because I end up chaining amazing artists. It just never stops. Um, as for whether or not you can't do anything in person, obviously, but like after you've shown everybody on social media, you could easily show family members and friends. You know, if you're married or you have roommates, like turn and show them too. Like, hey, look at this. Um, I mean, prime example, my husband's best friend showed up this morning to pick him up, and I ran down the stairs, and I know he doesn't care, but I showed him my Hylian shield that I finished yesterday just because I finished it and I'm proud of it. And I'm like, hey, look at this. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, well, showed somebody else. Like, I mean, I, I'm, I feel like that's all I do is I just show it off. And then, like, sometimes I'm like, is this even good enough to be like blurting stuff about? Oh, well, like, I tried. I feel proud of it. I feel like I should share it because I'm proud of it. So,
Hey,
also,
I
like,
told
be
you.
proud of it.
You're so positive. You had to answer that one.
Okay, I guess. Are you
Yeah.
sure you didn't talk in a circle?
I mean,
Going back
circle,
under my rock.
to be fair,
Ah.
circle is my favorite shape.
Yay.
If
But
I
you're
could,
also a star, so if anything, you talked in a star.
if I could,
That's not a. I don't know how to do a star.
That's okay. No one does. The mystery
Are,
of
are we
science.
ready for next
We
question?
are ready for the next question.
Fantastic. And I'm going to expand this question out a bit. The
Right
original
on.
question is how has cosplay changed? Bleh. How has cosplaying changed because of this? And I'm going to span that into how do we believe cosplaying will change going forward from this point? Like how do you think this has affected cosplaying?
Child, that's a loaded question.
I
yeah.
know.
Well, let's start with the downers.
Get
I-
that out of the way. Jeez.
well, okay. I think that with all of this stuff going on, that most people are dropping cosplay because it's money and it's time that's hard to spend because you're exhausted
And
from
don't forget
everything else.
Mana,
Mana. If you have a
aka
mana
the
bar,
effort.
not everybody has a mana bar. Rogues, warriors. I mean, I feel like by the time comic conventions do come around, we're gonna have a lot of people who have been burnt out by COVID, which makes me really sad. But it's hard to hold on to something that costs money and is a lot of effort, and then for a decent amount of time, aka anime time skip, you were unable to do that thing, and then sometimes that kind of thing loses its luster if you don't keep doing it.
All right, well, I'm going to bring the party up. I think that cosplay is going to is has a will be changed for the better in the sense that um so yes, I acknowledge and validate. Sorry,
More value.
I need to validate you because I agree with you, but I'm also going to weigh a counterpoint to make us feel a little bit better. So what I'm
Sorry.
noticing,
You told me I was so positive. I had to just throw some salt in there.
true, and you did tell me earlier that you were just gonna add just a pinch of salt, like a salt bay. Love
Like
you,
pretzels.
like
Yes.
pretzels. What I am noticing though is that a lot of folks have been using this quarantine to pick up a bunch of new skill sets. I learned how to knit, for example. Didn't know how to do that before the quarantine. Now I'm knitting like a champion. It's great. But like I'm noticing that because folks don't have conventions, especially as cosplayers, we are getting good at self photography. Like, for real, how many of us have bought our own cameras and tripods? I know at least two of us have. I'm calling us out, Larcy and me. Yeah, it's the two of us. But like we're learning new skills out of necessity, out of just sheer wanton need because we can't get the message out unless we're taking our own pitches. It's not like I can just easily go to a convention and be like, "Hello, photographers. Hello, first-person shooter of nerd caliber fame. Can you take my photomontage?" Like
Are you
that's
talking
not
about
really
Thanos?
happening. What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. This
Can
was
I
this
just
was
say, like as a
shameless
side
plug.
note to the photography,
Yes.
I've gotten really good at scaring the neighbors.
See, we're learning all kinds of skills. That was a skill set you didn't have before, and now you have it. So
I
I do
walked down
think,
I walked down the middle of the street the other day in a nor'easter holding a sword and a camera on a tripod.
Perfect.
exquisite.
Your
Hey, let's
neighbors.
take another question.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Exactly.
Right. How we feel
Sorry,
cosplay
guys.
will change because of this.
Yeah, yeah.
There we go.
So do you
Okay.
want let's take another question so we can get as many
Yeah.
people a satisfactory or merely okay answer.
I need to find some
Um,
duct tape.
this one came in. I think it actually is really relevant.
Ooh.
If you haven't made, uh, like especially if you haven't made anything new or you haven't planned anything out, would you suggest people talk about plans, such as, you know,
Like,
making plans for conventions or events or such?
oh, I heard plants.
I don't think
So
people make
confused.
I mean,
plans. They could
you
talk
Goggle
about
said it
them.
was relevant.
about
So.
making plants and putting plants in the ground, but it is winter, so you might not want to do that just yet.
That's Maine. Everything survives in Maine.
You know, my take on talking about making plans and making plans, like if they're cos plans, because that's a portmanteau the kids are using these days.
Yeah.
If it's cos plans, I find that if I don't talk about it, it won't happen.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So,
It
to
does.
some degree, I'm all about accountability, like my own personal accountability. So, like my saving grace for productivity this entire quarantine, this entire pandemic, has been that I have a Patreon. Shameless promotion. I've got a Patreon. Follow me today. Um, yeah, I keep very inspiring. Um, but because I have people who are invested in seeing me succeed and invested in seeing me do something, that has been motivation enough. It's like if I can't get myself out of bed, the fact that I'm accountable to other human beings certainly gets me out of bed because I am half Italian and I was raised in a Catholic household. So if that don't mean guilt is a motivator, I don't know what is. But guilt only gets me out of bed. The desire to make my community happy and therefore make me happy is
Mm.
a very powerful motivator and a really strong drug, let me tell you. Which is
And
why I
Um,
apple
think
juice
plans are
for
good.
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I will note on there, just, and if the plans are concerning conventions, because conventions are still, not
Not happening.
happening, but
No.
many of them are still trying to make those plans.
Yeah.
And say spring, I wouldn't make any plans.
Hard pass.
There are conventions who have announced their virtual plans, which obviously you can plan for those. There are some I know that are making hybrid plans, and I
Mhm.
would tentatively say it is okay to make plans for those conventions. Many of them are happening in the summer, where there's going to be a bit more ease at that point.
Mm.
Really, the after that, conventions to an extent, there are two things to keep in mind when it comes to like planning for conventions, whether or not we think they're going to happen or not. One being sometimes it's up to the state saying it's okay to have large gatherings.
Yes.
Good
And
point.
yes,
Yeah.
so sometimes it's not up to the conventions. Period. If the state like, no, we can't carry it. We're on at stage 4B red or whatever they want to call them.
Yeah.
Then they can't happen. So you just need to kind of keep that in mind with like what the states are saying. After that point, it kind of comes down to like where everyone kind of is in relative like, do they feel comfortable with like where we're at vaccinations and percentages. We're going to start getting new data in the next couple months, and it's going to be easier to tell at that point. Right now, I would just plan on say the virtual, maybe some of the hybrids, and then once more solid kind of data comes out of when things might start to happen again, then make actual plans for the physical in-person conventions.
Mhm.
And I think that is because for me to say don't plan on in-person conventions, I feel that would actually be counterproductive because people want to be able to plan for those. But just much
Yeah.
like everything else with this pandemic, make those plans with some safety and some reservation in mind. Because
Tentative
last thing you want
plans.
to do is
Pencil,
just
not
be
pen.
disappointed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as somebody who's been to, attended, there we go, a
That's
few
the word.
of the virtual online conventions, I have to say that just putting those in my calendar, like after having a year of blank calendar and seeing that my conventions are green because it's a happy color for me.
Oh, it's your
Seeing
zone
that,
of regulation.
well, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
That one point of green in that entire month just like brought my energy up so that I was able to function and get stuff done. And I just had a much better frame of mind going into it. So if you can, definitely make plans to do the virtual conventions because a lot of them do have a lot of cosplay panels that you can sit in and watching the panels, or even if it's like PAX Online had a Discord server that you were able to go and do fun little scavenger hunt things. And I think, yeah, that was just like, it was a huge high point for me. And my mental health just kind of raised itself up a little bit, even if I was,
Yay.
yeah. So making plans for that, and yeah,
It might not be the same, but it's still nice.
yes. And having something to look forward to is like having goals. And
Yay! We like
yeah,
goals.
being goal oriented can help with a lot of the anxiety and depression.
Hmm. Hey, speaking of goal oriented, my goal is to get as many questions as we
Yeah.
can.
Yes, let's
I
go.
I will note the person who asked that question, they'd wanted to clarify that they were talking about planning the work for making cosplay. Though I think Carly, you still sort of answered that, and just you'd still want to like plan that out ahead of time and still just make yourself accountable.
Can I add one sad side note
I
before we go on
guess.
to the next question? My sad side note is back when the pandemic began, so like March, April, I discovered that I actually needed to plan cosplays 2 months in advance because that's how long it would take for fabric to and like amenities from the online that I ordered to arrive because I haven't in person shopped for my cosplay in 9 months. God, that's disgusting. But that just means that for me, I have to plan a month in advance now because things are open again. But like back then, I was planning in like April what I was gonna do in June to give you a context of like how I wanted things to move rapidement. Because when it comes to me, if much like Larcy, if I stop moving, that's when the demons come back. So I gotta keep this little bitty busy.
It also helps too if you have something in mind, but you know that you won't get to wear it to an event for a while. Make it piece by piece. Be like,
Yeah.
this month I'm gonna make a pair of pants,
We
and
don't
they're
have to
gonna
con
be
crunch.
I, you know, I'm the only one here maybe, who has never con crunched. Because
Goggle.
I can't. If I do, I won't go because I will be so out of my mind that I will not be in a good place to hang out with friends positively. So if I want to make something the night before a con, I don't. I just grab an old because I can't. I literally just implode.
Spoken like someone who's
I look
watched
like
me cry
Ditto.
on my kitchen floor the night before a convention.
I mean, I will help you con crunch.
1000% you have.
I have done it and I have no regrets, but I will not do it for myself.
I have some regrets.
Because I also, for me,
That is
I
valid.
don't make that piece perfect. OCD. I will not wear it. I would rather throw it in the garbage.
Oh, meanwhile, my motivating factor is if I don't have that piece and somebody comments on it, like, wow, that's
Mm,
a really nice costume. Where's your sword? Then my soul breaks.
yep.
Oof.
And I can't have that. Or God
No.
help me, I'm like one of those like cosplay completionists where it's like I have to make it myself because that'll be the one thing that someone compliments is the thing I didn't make. And I've totally commissioned my friends to do cool things before and I love when I get to show off their beautiful work. But a bit of me dies inside every time someone's like, "Wow, I like that thing you didn't make." I'm like, "Great. Disregard everything else I worked oh very hard on. I I appreciate you." We should move on to the next question
Yeah.
before I start saying something I'm gonna regret.
All right. So we go back up to those that aren't directly just mental health. I guess this is kind of a gray area. Um,
Great.
how do we suggest people or tips for making friends at cons? Like when we were able to go to cons, like best way to like be able to just to have those social interactions and make those new friends.
You could
Ooh.
start with a simple, I like your outfit.
Yes. Or
It's so
finding
sad how
people
true
who
that
are
is.
in the same fandom as you.
Can I tell like a wholesome story? It's really quick. And this
Absolutely.
is how
Better.
I made a good friend of mine who I adore. And I haven't seen them in a while because they live in another state. But many years ago, when I did Blake Belladonna, and that was all I did,
Oh, I
the
know who this is
second
about.
con I ever went to, another anime convention, literally the first person I ran into as I walked through the door, like directly in front of me, nobody else, was an Adam cosplayer. And if any of you are familiar with Ruby, Blake and Adam are like, a kind of
Mhm.
thing that was in the beginning of the show and not so much at the end of the show.
It's called a ship.
It's a ship.
Thank you for
So,
the accurate terminology.
so the first actual like con friend that I ever actually made for real and took out of a con was the first person I walked through the door and it was a ship. And I was like, Adam! And he's like, Blake! And I'm like, cool! Like, it was really awkward. But it was like the best thing because from that awkward like situation came a friend that I would not give up for anything.
Mm.
And like it's just putting yourself out there even if you both are clearly like
Well, to supplement, I'm like 87% sure that everyone here met each other through conventions or at least through like social media, if not conventions. And I'm pretty sure it started with, "Hey, I like your costume."
Yeah.
So, I mean, really validating.
only one of you for me.
Okay, well, for me,
to
But
to take that in a if I might in a slightly changed direction, not just from like the hey I like your cosplay. For me, a majority of the friends that I've made at conventions have been through events or things that I'm very passionate about at conventions. At the when I first started going to conventions way back in the olden days of 2002, that
oh,
was
the
like
olden days.
I'm old. Um, that was like AMVs and CCGs primarily, and whatever the current cosplay I had, if I'd go to a shoot,
Translate
conversation
that.
there. But as of like the past, I'd say 8 years, it's been cosplay events, and like going to say something like that where there's a good amount of people who like from all walks of life that go to it. It's still finite enough that if you go to those sorts of events at different cons, you run into the same kind of people, and so you get talking more, and you kind of create this sort of like, I'd call it a family. Like, we're a little dysfunctional and we don't like everyone, but we're still a family. But like that's where like a lot of those friends and possible partners were met at.
Don't at me.
I'm adding you.
Do not.
I love that we could hear the "don't at me." So, Goggle, I believe we've got one last question that we've got time for.
Yep. Let me scroll
I
back up.
think it's in our Zoom chat.
In our Zoom. Okay.
Yeah.
Any tips on how to deal with changing body image and confidence over the pandemic and fear of not being able to wear cosplays from pre-2020?
It looks like
Oh
Kit
boy,
is going to jump out of her skin if she doesn't answer this.
oh boy, do I have this. So, yeah. So, part of this is super hard because I struggle with eating disorder and have for most of my life. Since other diagnoses have clashed with COVID, I've gained 75 pounds and don't currently fit in any of my costumes that I have made currently. Um, it takes a lot. And honestly, if you don't just can't get past that, it is okay. I have started costumes, and just because my pattern wasn't the same size as I am now, even though I made it a month ago, I have broken down in tears because of it. And it is heartbreaking to see something like that happen to yourself. Okay, I'm not going to cry. But coping with it, it is hard. There is no right way to answer this. Um, Talking to your doctor about what might be, or getting a good, or like researching what works for you for a good diet has been helpful for me. Um, Going through physical therapy has been helpful for me, but that's not always going to be the case for everybody else. Um, Learning to see yourself not as you used to be, but as you are now, and trying not to compare yourself to other people is huge.
That's very
Trying not
profound.
to, huh?
That's very profound.
Yeah, it's been a huge uphill battle for myself, as seeing older pictures from about 5 months ago, I look completely different than I do now, at least in my own mind's eye. And I still can't get over it every so often. And just either I have to power myself through it and just do it anyways, turn off cameras so I don't see myself. Um, Trying to, like, even at my shop, I have a giant full length mirror that shows me all the time, and I just like I have to turn it around so I don't see myself, and just not focus on the numbers of the measurements that I'm doing, but focusing on I am making a costume. If it doesn't fit me, maybe I'll sell it to somebody who it will fit, and that person will find joy in it, as opposed to myself wearing it and finding joy in it. Looking at yourself after you made the cosplay, I have found that taking pictures without my head in it and being able to look at the costume or cosplay not on myself, I will appreciate it that much better because I'm not seeing myself, but I am seeing the costume, if that makes sense.
That does. That's a really interesting strategy that kind of like pulls the individual out of the equation and focuses on like your talent, your skill, your accomplishment. At the end of the day, we have spoken so much about the importance of self care, self love, and self forgiveness. And that's something that I know, Kit, you did touch on is that you have to be willing to accept the fact that this is who you are, the skin, the body that you are in right now. And you are valid, beautiful, and worthy of love. And that love has to start with you before it can be anyone else. It's hard, but I love you, mysterious person who's out there watching this right now. So hopefully that'll give you enough to get motivated to love you too.
Can I say the saying?
Yeah,
Mhm.
everyone, tell the people watching that you love them.
We love you. Lots and lots of love.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on this topic? Because that body image, that's something I think that haunts all of us at one point or another.
Oh, yes.
Well, my cliche input, I don't think it's cliche, but some people do. All bodies are beautiful.
For reals.
You're a human being. Everybody is unique. You can find the same traits in everybody, but you yourself are unique in yourself. Like, and that's beautiful because there's nobody else that's you. Whatever shape you come in, like that's special, you know? And
Yeah,
the,
please,
the
sorry,
biggest
continue.
problem right now in this world is image because people are only looking for the perfect body, so to speak, but there is no perfect body because everybody is perfect. You know?
There is a wonderful hashtag I encourage you all to utilize. It's body positivity. Um, I'm a big fan of using hashtags on things like Twitter and Instagram to find things that I love also. And it's a way of getting people to recognize that that is the audience to whom you are reaching out. Because if you're using that hashtag and other people who are using that hashtag use that hashtag, then we will all get to see each other. I think a lot of us who struggle with our own body image are not only struggling with our own opinions of ourselves, but we're struggling with what we perceive other opinions are going to be. And so we're often afraid of putting ourselves out there because we're afraid of what somebody might say, whether we have experience with negative commentary or not, because we all know someone who knows someone who knows someone who has had a bad experience. And in any artistic medium, when you put yourself out there, when you make yourself vulnerable and someone takes advantage of your vulnerability to make you feel worse, that can really bring you down. But what I do want to remind everyone is that when you stand in the face of that vulnerability, when you put yourself out there, you're inspiring someone who may not even vocalize that they're inspired by you, but I assure you they are. And I have been inspired by so many varying people of body types, gender identities, orientations, does not matter. It's just so inspiring to, I know I'm overusing the word inspiring, I just don't know of a better synonym, but I'm just so motivated to be as excellent as the people I'm seeing. So again, self-love because I love you. On that note, unfortunately, we are running low on time, so I do want to first of all thank Nerd Caliber for hosting us because without their wonderful and charitable hosting, we may not have had the audience that we have tonight. So thank you so much, Nerd Caliber. For those of you who came, I do want everyone to kind of do their own shameless plug so that if you had more questions for us, or if you just want to see what we do when we're not just hanging out and talking about challenging subjects in cosplay, let's go around and tell people where they can find us. Goggle, I'm starting with you.
Well, I feel a little awkward going into the promoting my Twitch because I did not realize the past 90 minutes I've been using my webcam mic and not my actual Blue Yeti, mic over here to the side,
Oh,
which would have
bless.
been, like probably a little better.
You
Has all the
sound so
filters and all
good.
that.
Better than a broken headset.
Yeah. But as far as myself, I don't really have like a Facebook cosplay page or anything like that, just because I don't I'm weird where I don't like to really promote myself. I just like to run the events that I run and make sure everyone else at those events is promoted. But if there's a social media for me to say plug, the one thing that I do quite often is stream, as Mink also does. And the stream is under my tag, Goggle Candy. I do it 3 times a week. I'm playing a couple of cosplay ones, and generally, occasionally, I do slip into Pegasus, which is a wonderful thing and happens far easier now that all I do is talk.
That's twitch.tv/gogglecandy. Sub
Ye-
now. Kit, how about you? How can people get a hold of you?
Let's see here. So I kind of suck at the social media stuff.
You're
Um,
fine.
I am mostly everywhere as Kitten in Strings, all one word. Kitten in Strings is plural. There we go. On Facebook, you can usually find me as Kit Jenna with one N, and I usually have mostly answer questions either via Facebook Messenger or in our Facebook group, Maine Cosplay Social. Maine is in the state because that is where I am.
Ah. Larcy, take it away. Where can people find you?
I'm League of Larcy. I am the only one of my kind. Great. You can find me Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I'm not great at TikTok, but go ahead and watch my silly stuff anyways. I'm also on Twitch, but I don't do a lot of streaming currently. I do play Steam games every now and then, funky ones. If anybody's ever interested in seeing the weird, funky Steam games that I play, um, that's pretty much all I've got. Unless you want to come up to the Great North, I mean,
She's
go for a
also
hike
from
with
Maine.
me. I am a great outdoors girl.
Go hiking and cosplay.
All right, and then to round it out, I am Mink the Satyr, as in the mythological creature. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram,
TikTok.
Twitter, technically TikTok, but don't bother. I do not bother. You can find me on Patreon. Feel free to sponsor me anytime you like. And as Goggle Candy did say, you can find me on Twitch, where every Thursday night I am streaming drawings. I do a lot of doodling, and I drink a lot of juice, and I know things.
A lot of people become Pegasuses and other horse creatures.
For sure. Pegasi? Whatever the
What
plural is.
would I
Whatever it
be?
is.
A gremlin.
Why is that so accurate?
Because I know you. I told you I drink juice and I know things. All right, everybody. I do want to thank you once again for coming. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and following Nerd Caliber. Once again, we are deeply indebted to Nerd Caliber for hosting us tonight. Please follow them on Facebook, on Instagram, follow their Twitter, sub to their YouTube, give this video a like et al. Thank you so much, everyone. It has been an absolute blast. Catch you for the next one. I love you both.